Welcome back, artists. Now that you have planned out your gingerbread, it is time to make it out of clay. So you will get a board with some clay and a pattern, and your first job is to cut out the ginger person shape. So with your helper hand, you are going to be holding the stencil. With your dominant hand, your drawing hand, you are going to be using a wooden stylus, and you want to make sure you hold it straight up and down, and you're going to push all the way down to the board, and then you're going to trace slowly around the shape, keeping that pressure all the way to the board, going slow, moving your hand, your helper hand, so it's not in the way when you get to the other side, and go all the way around. And once you've had that cut out, you can take all of these scraps and you want to kind of ball them up into a little ball of clay so it doesn't dry out really fast for you. And we'll be using some of this clay to add our details. So now I can take off my pattern, and I'm going to take a minute to take my finger and just smooth the edges. I'm not pressing down really hard, and I'm just doing the top edge. I'm rounding that edge just a bit to make sure that it's not a sharp corner. Now once I go all the way around the front side, I want to pick it up very carefully and flip it over and do the back side. Again, I'm not pressing hard. The very edge of the clay is what I am focusing on, that sharp corner, just rounding it with my fingers. You may find that you get a little bit of clay on your fingers. You can use the ball of clay to help you get that off so it doesn't make any more crumbs. And then we're good. On the back, I'd like you to write your name and your class code. Now, when I'm writing my name, I am not pressing as hard as I did when I cut. I need to use much gentler pressure. You will notice that you might get some crumbs. Do you see how there's sort of crumbs on there? If you take your finger, you can gently rub them up or down to get rid of them. And now that my name is on there, I'm going to flip it over and start adding my designs to the front. There are two ways that you need to add designs. The first way is to press into the clay. So I was going to use the end of this to create the eyes, and I'm just going to press in a little bit so that you can see the eyes. And then I was going to use the tip of this to draw the mouth. My gingerbread person is smiling, and I use my finger to gently get rid of the crumbs. The second way that you are going to be adding designs is by adding clay that sticks out. So I was going to do some buttons that stick out, and the frosting by the legs are going to stick out. So I'm going to take a little bit of this clay that I have left over, and I want to roll it into a coil. I'm going to use the empty space on my board to use my fingers and roll this out. Now, these are pretty thin, so I want to make my clay a little bit thinner than this. So I'm going to break it in half and do some more rolling. I want this to be rather thin. Notice how I'm going from one edge of the clay to the other with my fingers. And I'm also making sure that this coil rolls all the way around. If I only rolled a little bit, I'm going to get a flat coil, so you have to press it all the way down from the top of your fingers, probably down to your hand. Now this is about the size of the coil that I want. So now I'm going to take a little bit of the clay. You can twist the clay to cut it. Then I wanted to shape it. Do you notice how there's curves? Here I'm going to shape my coil into a curve. It doesn't have to be exactly like you have on your drawing, but you want to try your best. And then this will go right here. But in order to make it stick, I have to do two important steps. I have to scratch the clay, so not only where it's going to be going, but the clay itself. This is called scoring. And then I'm going to add some water. In art, when we work with clay, water is like the glue. Do you see how I'm just using my finger to fill in those ridges that I made when I scratched the clay, when I was scoring the clay? Notice how the water turns a little bit milky. Now I'm going to put the wet side on the wet side, and I'm going to press it down. When I press it down, I should see a little bit of water coming out from that seam. That way, I know I used enough water. If you don't use enough water or glue with clay, it's not going to stick. So now I have one side done. Everything I can do for my buttons is take a little bit of this clay. I'm going to break 3 pieces that are about the same size because mine has 3 buttons. And then I can take one of these in my hand and I can roll it into a ball. And that can be one of my buttons. And then I can do it again. So I can have 3 buttons. Now in order to make these stick, remember I have to slip and score. So I'm going to scratch where I want my buttons to go, scoring the clay, roughing it up, and then I'm going to score the bottom of the clay piece that I'm putting there. I'll put a little bit of water. While I have my water full, I'll do it on all of them, and then I put the wet side on the wet side, and I give it a gentle push. I want to see that water coming out so I know that it is stuck. And I'll repeat this with the other ones. I want to make sure that I have a line that indicates where the head stops and the shirt begins. So I'm going to use maybe one of these tools. We have other tools that you can use to press in things as well. But if I use this tool here, I can draw a deeper line a little bit easier. Again, when I use this tool, I'm not pressing all the way down. I want to be gentle. And then I notice there are also stripes here. I'm going to draw those stripes out as well. Leaving some space in between. Notice how I clean off my tip in between as I go, so the clay that's on there doesn't get stuck. I'll do one more. And I can also use these parts to press into the clay to make some shapes. So if I wanted to add a pattern around the collar here, and I like this triangle point, I could tip my edge, and as I press it in, do you see how that makes a triangle? Now I want to do a couple over here too, so it looks the same. And I'm just gently pressing in to make that shape on the top. And maybe I'll do it on the bottom here as well. Triangle shape, pressed in, 2 on each side. Now I'm still not quite finished. I have a little bit more slipping and scoring to do.